Breaking on NBC Boston tonight, a suspect now in custody for the death of a bicyclist in Back Bay. We're live with the latest. Plus, fired by President Trump.
Why fire James Comey now and not months ago?
Right now, questions are mounting as James Comey is no longer leading the FBI. Tonight, live team coverage with reaction and what this means moving forward. Also, tragedy on the Cape, what police are telling us after divers find a man submerged in 15 feet of water. NBC Boston Tonight starts right now. And good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Shannon Malaire.
And I'm Phil Lipoff. Welcome to NBC Boston Tonight. The latest coming out of Washington for you in just a moment. But first, we need to get to that breaking news out of the Back Bay.
Boston police now have a man in custody in connection to a bicyclist's death in a hit and run.
NBC Boston's Chris Emma joins us live from BPD headquarters tonight. Chris, what are police telling you?
Phil and Shannon, good evening. It took 8 days, but Boston police say they have finally made an arrest in that deadly hit-and-run accident that happened in Boston's Back Bay. Police say that 25-year-old Malone Kidane Merriam is now in custody and now charged with leaving the scene of an accident causing death. Police say that 30-year-old Rick Archer was riding a bike near the intersection of Comm Ave and Clarendon in Back Bay just after 3 o'clock in the morning 8 days ago when he was hit by a car, then died. Now, that car, police say, was driven by Kidane Merriam, who fled that scene. Commissioner Evans, in a statement, thanked his investigators and all the residents who called into the tip line during the investigation, actually. But an arrest made 8 days after the deadly hit-and-run accident in Back Bay. Again, 25-year-old Malone Kidane Merriam. He will face a judge on Wednesday morning. Reporting live from Boston headquarters, Chris Emma, NBC Boston.
Chris, thank you. Still developing at this hour, political fallout after President Trump's decision to fire FBI Director James Comey.
We are bringing you live team coverage. NBC Boston's Audrey Assistio will join us in just a moment with the message behind President Trump's decision, according to one political expert.
But right now, let's bring in NBC Boston's Joy Lim Nakrin with more on who might be leading the FBI in the immediate future. Joy?
Well, Phil and Shannon, you can see a live look at our nation's capital tonight, where a Justice Department official tells NBC News that Andrew McAbee, who's been the FBI's deputy director, is now the acting director. Now, Comey's firing comes just days after he testified on Capitol Hill about his agency's investigation into the Trump administration's possible ties with Russia and possible Russian interference in the 2016 election. It also comes 6 days after he said it made him, quote, mildly nauseous that his agency's probe into Hillary Clinton's email scandal may have impacted the election. Today, the FBI said during his testimony that Comey understated how many of Clinton's emails had been investigated. Secretary of State Sean Spicer saying the president acted on the recommendation of Attorney General Jeff Sessions. And tonight, I got reaction from Massachusetts Senator Ed Markey.
Well, the person being investigated just fired the person conducting the investigation. That is, after President Trump himself called the investigation a taxpayer-funded charade and a hoax, he then fired Jim Comey. And if the reasons outlined by the Department of Justice are true, why fire James Comey now and not months ago?
Now, Comey led the FBI since 2013, and NBC News has learned that he found out about his firing at the FBI's LA field office just as cable news networks blasted the news, right while he was being notified about it. Reporting live, Joy Lim Nakrin, NBC Boston.
All right, Joy, thank you. Behind me is the heat map. You can see everyone all across the country, voters, politicians, everyone speaking their mind, including Senator Elizabeth Warren tweeting out here. Does anyone seriously believe Donald Trump fired the top person investigating his ties to Russia because he was unfair to Hillary, followed by telling Congress to, quote, get their heads out of the sand so the president cannot pick who takes over Comey's position in the investigation into the president's ties to Russia?
Well, while the discussion continues on social media, we want to bring you more than just 140 characters worth of insight into what this means moving forward. NBC Boston's Audrey Assistio spoke with a political scientist from UMass Boston. Audrey, what'd she have to say?
Well, Shannon, Erin O'Brien says that the move just doesn't make political sense. And she says the timing of Comey's firing makes the conversation all about Russia. He assured Boston College during a cybersecurity conference back in March he was in it for the long run.
Hope you'll do it many more times. You're stuck with me for about another 6.5 years.
But James Comey's time as FBI director was cut short Tuesday. President Donald Trump fired him. Erin O'Brien is chairperson of the political science department at UMass Boston. She believes the timing of Comey's firing is bizarre.
Where there's smoke, there's fire. You know, like, you just fired the person who's looking into you. If you had nothing to hide, you wouldn't be doing that.
The FBI has been investigating allegations that people involved with Trump's presidential campaign had undisclosed ties to Russia.
Trump is really good at, when something's going bad for him, throwing a diversion. And I think he really misplayed with this diversion.
And when it comes to Trump's termination letter to Comey,
it's odd that you're bringing up, you cleared me 3 times, but I'm still firing you. It's strange. And it's strange in a way that I think is going to have political blowback for the Trump administration.
And so what's next? Well, O'Brien says that Russia will likely dominate the headlines and discussions for quite some time. She, of course, saying that is not good for the Trump administration. We're live in Boston. Audrey Assistio, NBC Boston.
Audrey, thank you. And of course, for the latest on Comey's firing and his possible replacement, be sure to tune into the Today Show tomorrow, right after NBC Boston Today, which begins at 4:30.
This is new at 11. Police in Lowell are investigating after a 14-year-old boy was shot in the head. Police say the bullet appears to have come from inside the house where the boy was found. The victim was rushed to the hospital and is expected to survive. Also new tonight, a man who was out fishing is dead at this hour after what investigators are calling an accidental drowning on the Cape.
Dive crews pulled the man out of Great Pond in Eastham. NBC Boston's Susan Tran joins us now live from there with more. Susan?
And Shannon, the fire chief says even before the man reached here at Cape Cod Hospital, there were several attempts to save him. There was a bystander who tried to reach him but just couldn't. And by the time first responders got there, he was already underwater. And because that water was so murky, they had such a difficult time reaching him.
Eastham Fire, along with the regional dive team, pull a man out of Great Pond earlier this evening. He'd been submerged for more than an hour, but the fire chief says because of the cold water, they were still hopeful they could revive him. The EMTs worked on him the entire time as they rushed him to Cape Cod Hospital, where the district attorney's office says the man died. Eastham Fire says the call came in around 5 this evening that a man in a 12-foot fishing boat coming back to shore was in the water yelling for help. Divers from throughout the Cape came out to scour the murky water. The Coast Guard chopper hovered overhead before rescuers finally pulled the man's body from 15 feet of water, where he was 120 feet from shore.
Now, the fire chief says that the divers were able to retrieve that boat. It was nearly submerged. Just the nose of it was tipping and sticking out of the water. They say that that water was just so murky. And right now they're trying to figure out exactly how that boat took on water. Was it swamped? Was there a mechanical problem? Or did it just tip over and collect water? That's the very latest. Live tonight in Hyannis, Susan Tran, NBC Boston.
Susan, thank you. More headlines in just a moment. But first, a quick look at your early morning weather forecast with meteorologist Pete Bouchard.
Pete, what are you tracking for tomorrow?
Well, I have some clouds that'll build into a shower perhaps in the afternoon. It's the same old story here. Our temperatures today, a huge disappointment. We should be 64 in Boston. We were 52, 51 in Worcester. Should be in the 60s there as well. Now in the 40s. We still have a lot of clouds, and these will scatter out with a lot of moonlight later tonight. Some breaks just after midnight, and then clearing as we get into the wee hours of the morning. A chilly start. Building clouds. A chance for a sprinkle tomorrow. We'll talk all about that and whether or not we break out of this pattern anytime soon. Shannon.
Hoping so, Pete. Thank you. We'll see you then. Happening tomorrow, a prayer service will be held right before the Linway Auto Auction opens for business. Auction site also says there will be new safety measures in place. 3 people died in last week's crash when a driver lost control of a car up for auction. 9 others were hurt. No charges have been filed against that driver.
New tonight, federal investigators speaking to shocked parents and students as a high school track coach faces child pornography charges. NBC Boston's Frank Holland joins us live outside Wellesley High School tonight with more. Frank?
You know, parents wouldn't say a lot about their meeting with federal prosecutors and federal investigators here at Wellesley High, but some did say it's just unsettling to think that Coach Walter Johnson was so close to their kids before he was fired.
I just want my daughter to be safe.
Gary Lee had questions after the arrest of a Wellesley High track coach on child pornography charges. Tonight, he and dozens of other parents got some answers during a meeting with representatives from the U.S. Attorney's Office and Homeland Security.
He's part of a bigger ring of distribution, sounds like. So he's kind of part of it and not the source of it.
The 69-year-old was arrested by federal agents here at his Framingham home last month. Investigators say he admitted to using Craigslist to send and receive explicit images of children.
Can we speak to Mr. Johnson, please?
Johnson's now on house arrest. We tried to ask him about these accusations. A woman at his house asked us to leave.
I'm just sad and disappointed.
Wellesley High parents say it's disturbing to think that someone their kids trust would be involved with child pornography.
I think any parent should be concerned.
And the parents that we spoke with say that federal investigators tell them that Johnson is still a part of a bigger child porn ring, and that investigation into that larger porn ring is still ongoing. Live here in Wellesley, Frank Holland, NBC Boston.
Frank, thank you. A civil case continues tonight against Aaron Hernandez, despite a judge's ruling that overturned his murder conviction. An old state law forced the court to drop his conviction for the murder of Odin Lloyd because Hernandez had appealed before he died. Lloyd's mother is still suing the Hernandez estate for damages, but experts say dropping that conviction could make that tough.
Before they could rely upon the fact that he was convicted to establish that he was responsible for Odin Lloyd's death. Now they may have to actually prove more affirmatively that he actually committed the murder.
Prosecutors plan on appealing to reinstate the conviction. Next on NBC Boston tonight, flag flap. One woman's letter to her community is doing the opposite of what she wanted. Plus,
at second May Day, I was a little bit more anxious. I was a little bit more like, we need to get out of here right now, and I hope somebody hears this.
no one did, so NBC Boston investigators started digging for answers. Tonight, we hear their story for the first time.
And take a look at this video. A school bus engulfed in flames. The driver's quick response that saved dozens of young lives. NBC Boston Tonight is back in 60 seconds.